Good afternoon. You're watching Last Take. I'm Shweta Kothari. Breaking news coming in at the top of the broadcast. Hearing in the Adani-Hindenburg case by a bench led by Chief Justice of India, the D.Y. Chandrachud, is currently underway. The Apex Court is hearing PILs seeking investigation into allegations of stock manipulation and accounting fraud against the Adani Group. Here is what has come out of the hearing so far. SEBI has submitted before the court that it is not seeking an extension of the time to submit its findings. The markets regulator has concluded investigation in 22 out of 24 cases, and it will proceed with recommendations of the expert committee. That is what SEBI has said. The court has said that SEBI has to take steps in future so that these instances of short selling can be avoided. Now, petitioners are saying that SEBI's role in the matter of Adani investigation is suspect. They knew of these allegations way back in 2014. Petitioners have listed reasons for reconstitution of the Supreme Court appointed expert committee, citing conflict of interest. Now, Supreme Court says that SEBI must complete the probe in all 24 cases. That is the direction coming in. Those are the observations that have been made in the court of law. The hearing in the matter is currently on. My colleague Suyash Maheshwari with me here in the studio. Suyash, what's the impact on Adani Group stocks?
So surprisingly, Shweta, we have been talking about how volatility has hit the Adani stable of stocks, the 10 listed entities. But in today's trade, most of them ended, I think, apart from Ambuja, all 9 other stocks ended in the green. Adani Enterprises led the charge. It was up about 3.4% or so. Adani Ports also ended about 1% higher. Power also gained, and I think Power is the only one stock that has actually given positive returns this year, with returns of about 30%. All other Adani Group stocks are trading with deep cuts in 2023, and they have not even recovered from their January 24 price. I think apart from Adani Power, Adani Ports is the only stock, whereas some other stocks are still about 50 to 60% below the price. And if we go back to the beginning of 2023, when the report came out, we saw a massive decline of about 15-16%, 24% over the course of the month, but within a week we saw a decline of 15-16%, and at the bottom, the entire group lost a market capitalization of about $150 billion or so. Since then, after that, up till May or so, we saw some bit of recovery, but after July, Shweta, most of these stocks have been either trending downward or in a channel, moving sideways. So a lot of volatility we are seeing in these stock prices, and the volumes are also low, which suggests that there is not much activity from big investors, the retail money that's moving around.
All right, not much of a movement, but all Adani Group stocks ending in the green today, apart from Ambuja Cement, which ended very, very marginally lower. Joining us on the show is Avinash Gorashakar, Director Research, Profit Mart Securities. Avinash, before I go to broader markets and other stocks that we are tracking, particularly on Adani stocks, what is your view at this point? It doesn't look like what's happening in the Supreme Court has much of an impact on, the Adani Group stocks or on investors at large.
Yeah, I think, Shweta, I think this case has been dragging for a very long time. And I think you're right in saying that, the result is not going to be any negative surprise. But I think all said and done, the markets would await for further clarity on the matter once and for all. This is a long-standing kind of case. Markets were waiting for this solution quite some months back. So I think, markets would obviously like to get full clarity on the issue once and for all. And only then one can obviously take a very selective call as to which, companies one could bet on from the Adani Group.
Okay, it looks
But I think fundamentally, all these companies are generating a lot of cash. They have got strong businesses. So I think we could definitely await the judgment and then take a call later.
All right, of course, everybody are waiting a judgment there. The case has been dragging on for quite some time now. In fact, petitioners there are alleging that SEBI knew of these allegations way back in 2014. It has been investigating Adani Group. The final report from SEBI in the 22 matters it has concluded is not out just as yet. So I think industry watchers, people who hold some interest in Adani Group, will be looking to see the findings of the SEBI, which hopefully should come out very, very soon. But moving to other stocks that we are tracking, PSU stocks, Suyash, are in focus today.
Certainly, Shweta. PSU stocks have been in focus, but PSU Insurance stocks are the one that were, stealing all the limelight in today's lackluster session. I was tracking the movement, the price movement across the session, and the kind of returns we saw today. LIC was up almost 10%. GIC, the General Insurance Corporation of India, was up about 15.45%. At day's high, it went up as much as 19%. National India Assurance, whereas ended in the upper circuit, it was up almost 20% in today's trade. And the phenomenal returns we have seen in the past 15 days, where as all three stocks have given returns of about 35% to 50% in just a matter of 8 to 9 sessions. And Shweta, I was trying to find a reason for this rally, and there is no fundamental reason as such, but from what I can understand, there are some ancillary factors that are working in favor of these stocks. First of all, it's a low float. So let's start with National India Assurance first. National India Assurance, about 86% of the entire stake of the company is with the government. 9% is held by LIC, and about 1% is with GIC Re. So the remaining, what's left for public is just about 5%. So there is a lot of, very little float that's available in the market, and because of that, perhaps heavy buying or selling activity is going on, and by a few traders. That's why we are seeing such big movements. Similarly, in the case of GIC Re, also 86% or so is held about by the government. LIC also holds about 9% stake, and again 5% stake is just in the public float. For LIC, 96.5% of the entire stake of LIC is still held by the government of India, whereas only 3.5% is in the public float. Another factor, Shweta, is that the kind of rally that we have seen in PSU stocks, some of them have turned multi-baggers this year, but not PSU insurance stocks. They are, trading at a relatively lower valuation compared to other PSU stocks. I'm looking at some of them. LIC, for example, is just at 1.6 times its price to embedded value. National India Assurance is at about 1.6 times its price to book, and GIC Re is at about 1.5 times its price to book. And despite this rally, sir, I want to take this question to you. All three stocks are still significantly below their IPO price. For National India Assurance, the adjusted IPO price was about 400 rupees. It's currently at around 209 or so. So, about half of the IPO price. For GIC, the IPO price was 456 rupees. The stock closed about, 30% shy of that IPO price. LIC is also pretty much around 25-28% lower than the IPO price. Do you expect that perhaps, the rally will continue? And what do you make of the kind of movements that we saw in, PSU insurance stocks today? Avinash, sir.
I think my guess is Suyash. Yeah. So coming back to the insurance stocks, Suyash, I think there's been a lot of accumulation in these stocks, for the last few weeks, and I think this is on the back of some strong numbers which are expected, from the third and the fourth quarter numbers, especially in terms of business growth. So I think which have also moved up include, companies like Max Healthcare, ICICI Pru, SBI Life. So I think markets are getting a hint that possibly numbers are going to be much stronger than expectations. The fourth quarter typically is a very strong bumper quarter for all these insurance companies, and I think coming specifically on GIC Re and NISCL, these are stocks which have moved up very sharply in the last 8 to 10 days. So I think there seems to be some fundamental reason by which such kind of sporadic buying has come in. We need to obviously watch whether this is sustainable. But I think overall this space is getting interesting because most of the negatives are now passed behind. Post-COVID, business growth has been very strong, and our sense is that if numbers, especially the business side front, comes better than expectation, then you could see a further re-rating, in these counters in the very near term.
All right. That is, of course, as far as PSU insurance stock is concerned. We also want to talk about markets in general. Markets, closing on a flattish note this afternoon, Suyash.
Yes, Shweta. So one word to define the market momentum today was lackluster. We started the day above 19,800, went on to touch that November high of about 19,875. Saw some correction from there, on a closing basis. We also failed to defend 19,800, which we have, by the way, closed above in the last two sessions. We just closed marginally below it. All in all, the session was muted. Nifty ended 0.04% lower at 19,794 levels. Sensex on the other hand ended about 0.07% lower below the 66,000 mark. The broader markets continue to gain traction. Mid-cap 100, although has been on a 17 session winning run, but the momentum seems to be slowing at the higher levels. But the index on the whole managed to close above the 42,000 levels. Small cap index, which had come under fair bit of pressure in the beginning of the week, has recouped most of its losses, and the index ended above 13,800 mark. Volatility has also come down significantly in today's session. For the day, the India VIX, the volatility index, was up 0.13%, sitting below the 12 mark, which it had climbed in the last few sessions or so. And overall, I think the story really is playing out in the banking and financials pack over here, Shweta, because the kind of correction we have seen in this space, specifically for the private banking pack, we are seeing some sort of a momentum build up over there, because if you remember back on Wednesday, when on the day of weekly expiry, we saw a significant correction where the index even went on to touch at 43,300 levels, which was for a lot of the, for a lot of experts that we were speaking to, was going to be a very crucial support zone for the index. So the index did test that, fell slightly below it, and was able to build on from there, and now we have closed above the 19,700 mark, which by the way is a 38.2 retracement level of the entire fall from its all-time high levels, plays at around 46,300 to the low of October 26, which was about 42,105. So good movement there in the banking pack, ending about 0.44% higher in today's trade. The private sector banks also ended about 0.14% higher, led by strong gains in banks like HDFC Bank. PSU banks although saw some correction in today's session. Apart from the IT pack, if we are to touch on a few other sectors, the auto pack has scaled a new lifetime high. It ended marginally higher, but again above the 17,000 levels. The pharma pack, which had seen a sharp decline in yesterday's trade, which was down about by 1.5%, primarily dragged by Cipla, which fell about 8% or so, recouped some of its losses and ended about 0.87% higher, but below the 16,000 level, which by the way it had claimed for the first time earlier this week. So all in all, if you also look at the momentum of the entire markets, I think it's leaning towards the bears. If you can pull up the market statistics graphic, you will see the entire momentum, which was pretty much leaning towards the bulls in the first half of the week, has now shifted towards the bears. Around 1,150 shares advanced in today's trade, whereas about 1,286 shares on NSE declined. 108 shares remain unchanged. 103 stocks in today's session, the Friday's session, hit an upper circuit, whereas 39 stocks had hit a lower circuit. Amongst about 132 stocks also scaled a fresh 52-week high, and about 14 stocks touched a fresh 52-week low. So coming to you, Avinash, what are you making of this consolidation? The markets have not given up much of the gains, but Nifty has been consolidating in the last couple of sessions. Bank Nifty, which was struggling, is kind of turning the corner. Other sectors like your auto, IT and pharma have been the major gainers and taking that leadership role, driving the markets higher. What are you making of the overall breadth of the market at this point in time, sir?
I think my guess is, Suresh, I think the market breadth is going to be extremely cautious ahead of the state election results on the 3rd of December. So I think only once the final results are out, you would see the market gaining some positional traction either on the upside or on the downside. The markets have now partly discounted the fact that maybe BJP may not continue to win Madhya Pradesh, but may win Rajasthan. But if there is some negative surprise as to if BJP loses both the states, then I think that could be a big negative surprise. So I think 3rd December is going to be a very crucial. So till that time, the markets are going to be in an extremely narrow zone, and I think volatility will be very sharp, at least ahead of the event.
All right, markets of course not liking the suspense of what's going to come on 3rd of December, that will have an impact. But, before I actually go to Avinash, I also want to understand from you on the broader market, specifically on small caps. There's been a lot of volatility in the past couple of weeks. Suyash,
yes,
what are we making of where the small caps are headed at the moment? Lots of people we speak to say stay away from it. Lots of people say ride the wave of green as far as small caps is concerned. What's your assessment? You've been speaking to so many experts.
I mean, the beauty of the entire situation is the diversity of opinions we are getting. Most, of course, are leaning towards, perhaps for retail investors, which have been driving these stocks higher, as we have seen from Amphi data, that participation in the mid cap and the small cap space has increased significantly this year. So for them, I think the broader advice, at least from what we are understanding, is that maybe book some profits, but then structurally, it's a long-term story that we are seeing playing out. Some of these small cap stocks will turn into mid cap stocks, and these mid cap stocks will turn into large cap stocks. So they are at a very crucial juncture, and we are seeing a structural sort of a rally build up after a very, very long time. So yeah, the market do look overheated, but at the same time, if you are invested in for the long term, perhaps
stocks to go.
Mid caps and the small caps will perhaps help you get that alpha. Would you agree, sir?
Avinash?
I think your point is right, Suresh, that I think, you need to be little careful about small caps now because, price appreciation in this category has been very, very significant. And you got to be very selective. But I think, the longer term story continues to be solid wherever the companies have posted better Q2 numbers. Obviously, the business commentary has been good. The management is confident. I think probably, these some of the select companies would continue to do well. So it all is not lost. But yes, you need to be a little cautious now and I think have a higher tilt towards the large caps.
All right, stay with us, Avinash. We are also trying to get information on the IPOs that we are tracking for the past couple of days. Suyash has the details. Suyash?
Yes, Shweta. So very strong. I mean, if you look at the markets, they might have been lackluster, but the primary market, Shweta, has been seeing a lot of
so much momentum in the IPO market.
4 IPOs, by the way, are going to close today. They'll close by about 5 p.m. So if you have not subscribed, perhaps you can still subscribe. Tata Tech, for example, let's begin with that. Tata Technologies is the first IPO from the Tata stable after in nearly 20 years. The last time they came out with an IPO was back in 2004 with TCS. Their entire issue has been subscribed by about 63.69 times. Now this is as of 3:30 p.m. In today's session, and if you look at the retail portion, that has been booked by about 16 times. But the real shocker for me, Shweta, was the QIB part, the qualified institutional investor part, which the book was on the whole booked by about 181 times. And if you look at the non-institutional buyer book, that was filled by about 61 times. So all in all, very good participation we saw in Tata Tech IPO, and even the employee portion has been subscribed by 3.5 times. So strong interest we are seeing in the IPO. It's still open. You can perhaps, if you want to subscribe to the IPO of Tata Tech and other IPOs, you still have about an hour or so to do that. Another IPO that I would want to touch on is Gandhar IPO. Again, we saw a very strong participation in that. On the whole, on day 3, it was subscribed by about 62.13 times. QIB book portion was fulfilled by about 121 times. So again, strong interest from qualified institutional buyers. The non-institutional buyer book was filled by about 63.7 times, as you can see on your screen. The retail portion was also filled by about 28.75 times. Moving on, let's also look at the Flair Writing IPO. Flair Writing IPO, between the 4, I think it's the 3rd most subscribed IPO. The entire issue was subscribed by about 47.24 times. The QIB book was filled by about 116 times. Now this is again as of 3:30 p.m. NII portion was filled by about 35 times, and retail portion saw a subscription of 13 times. Moving on to Fedbank, that was perhaps the muted of all 4, but again it was oversubscribed almost twice. The entire book on day 3 was filled by about 2.09 times as of 3:30 p.m. today. Retail portion was booked by about 1.82 times. NII portion was filled by about 1.45 times, and the QIB portion was filled by about 3.07 times. Now, sir, I mean, I'm looking at Tata Technologies. Overall, if you keep aside that Tata brand, that Tata company, would you say it's a good business to enter into? Because I was looking at their financials and their reports. They have a huge concentration risk because 40% of the entire business comes from JLR and Tata Motors.
No, exactly. I think, Shivash, you're right. But looking at the kind of track record, from the Tatas, 17 years back, and after that they have never done a public issue. So this could be the same kind of event for Tata Technologies, because they want to do an OFS just to get their value, their business valued on the stock markets. So my sense is that the concentration risk is high, but the opportunity for growth is also equally large. The markets would initially look at this stock as a kind of a same replica of TCS, what it was in its early days. So I think we should not be surprised if the stock gets listed in the 4-digit mark initially.
4-digit would be almost twice, because 475 to 500 is the price band for the entire stock, and Mr. Gorak Shakar over here expects a 4-digit perhaps booking. And even if you look at the grey market premium of Tata Tech, Shweta, 350 rupees premium, so 70% from here
Looking
on
a very
itself.
lucrative business to enter by the way of an IPO at this point. Avinash Gorashakar, thank you very much, sir, for joining us with your inputs on that very interesting IPO segment that we continue to track. But before we close this bulletin, the hearing in Adani-Hindenburg case has now concluded. We are given to understand that the Supreme Court has reserved judgment in the hearing. Remember, a bench led by Chief Justice of India D.Y. Chandrachud was hearing the matter. The Apex Court was hearing PIL seeking investigation into allegations of stock manipulation and accounting fraud against Adani Group. There was no impact on Adani Group stocks. But so far, the latest details that we have is that the court has now concluded its arguments and reserved its judgment for a later date. And with that, it's a wrap on this bulletin. Thank you very much for watching.